Before we start, can we get this video to 1,000 likes? Please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. This is a story that will leave you baffled, astonished, proud, and scared. We will take a look at the incredible courage of a little girl who put an end to the torment of a Texas serial killer. This 11-year-old girl could have been out playing with her friends in the sun at that moment. She could be dressed in her best dress or shorts with her family on a picnic somewhere calm and nice. She could have been in a Sunday school class. Instead, she was brave. Sitting in a courtroom a few moments after everyone was seated in the court, a pale, short-haired man with a blue tattoo around his ear made his entrance. He was the most awaited person of the day, was the reason so many people turned up to the courtroom. He had the looks of everything but a serial killer. Looking at Tommy Lynn Sells, you would not think for a second that he was a killer. He looked like he could have been one of the lawyers. As he made his grand entry, Sells kept looking at Crystal, the girl he took for dead. Crystal managed to survive, and she was the one responsible for him being there. He forever regretted the day that he let this girl take a long look at his face. Making news of his arrest was the big news. He was slowly becoming a nationally known serial killer for all the atrocities he has committed before he decided to shift his life goals to taking people's lives. He used to be one of those guys who stood by the road with signs like, "We'll work for food." The New Year's Eve murder of Colleen Harris is the reason he was at court that day. The little Colleen, aged 13, had her life and dreams taken away from her brutally. The killer broke into the girl's room at night and helped cover her mouth so she couldn't make a sound as he attempted to rape her. A rape that ended not only taking the girl's innocence, but her life as well. In a failed attempt to defend herself, Colleen refused to cooperate and surrendered her rapist. Furious from the resistance he was getting, Sells stabbed her 16 times to death. Before he left, he sliced Crystal's throat. The girl who was testifying against him that day left her for dead. Who could ever know that a simple sleepover among kids would end up so violently? On the 30th December 1999, Crystal, aged 10, together with her sister Mark Searles, 7, went to their close friend's place, Katie Harris, placed for a pajama party among girls. Katie's father was out of town. Her 14-year-old brother was to sleep in his room, and her 12-year-old sister would be sleeping with her mother. Crystal was mad at her sister Mark. She kept her out of the sleepover and insisted that she sleeps alone in the guest room. Katie would share the bunk bed with Crystal, her best friend. Mark was upset about what her sister had done. She was going to spend the night lonely in the single room while her sister and her friend would be having fun. The night was quiet and peaceful as the girls slept peacefully. The clock passed midnight, and it was now New Year's Eve, only one day left until the new millennium. Tommy Lynn Sells would soon disturb the peace not only of the night, but of their lives. The prison was wrong to think that their convict was a completely changed man. They offered him freedom in good faith, fooled by the appearance he took and the empty promises of how he treated the world after his release. Setting him free was a mistake that cost the lives of an innocent child who didn't have the chance to paint her pink dreams. It was around 3:50 a.m. when Sells broke into the Harris home. Everyone had long been asleep. The rooms were quiet and dark. Only the sound of breathing could be heard. Sells had just left a bar. He snuck into the house pretty drunk. After checking every room, he got into Katie's room. She snuck into her bed, cut off her underwear, and started molesting her. Katie fought back fiercely to keep him off her, which woke Crystal up. The first thing she saw was a tall shadow attacking her friend in her very own room. Katie was screaming, trying to wake everyone up and get some rescue. She kept fighting the monster with all the force she had in her. The killer ended up stabbing her 16 times after seeing that there was no way he could enjoy her in the state she was. He was used to killing people. He knew all the easiest and fastest ways of killing. He has never left any evidence of his actions behind, and he wasn't going to start now. There was no way he would not leave his eyewitness alive. Crystal was fast to protect herself. She held her hands around the neck protectively so the knife did not go deep into the trachea. Otherwise, she would have suffocated and died. Sells, however, thought he'd done enough to kill her and left her thinking she was long dead. Crystal lay still on the floor, trying not to suffocate from her blood without showing any signs of life. After this, She heard the door slam shut. The killer left the property after finishing up his victims for the night. Crystal got on her hands and knees and crawled across the floor towards her wounded friend. At that time, Katie was making a gasping sound. She was clean to live with all she had. Crystal wanted to comfort her, but she could not talk as her throat was injured. Only a few moments after Katie stopped making the gasping noises, the innocent 13-year-old Katie had succumbed to her wounds and left this world on New Year's Eve. Crystal quickly stood and ran to Mark's room to check on her. She was traumatized from her bloody night and wanted to make sure he didn't get to her sister. Crystal tried shaking her sister to wake up as she could not talk or scream. She wasn't willing to wake up. Crystal struggled to wake her as she couldn't make a single noise with her slit throat. When Mark refused to wake up, Crystal's heart sank even more. She was terrified at the thought of having her sister and the rest of the family killed as well. She knew she had to get help. The 10-year-old girl was determined to save her family. Despite her staggering pain and blood loss, she managed to crawl to her nearest neighbors. She banged on the neighbor's door to raise the alarm and left them notes saying that the Harris family needed help. Crystal was lucky to get to the hospital early and get treated on time. Soon after she was admitted to the hospital, the police came in and Crystal worked with them and the sketch artist to reveal the perpetrator's image. The police, with the efforts of the investigators, were able to arrest and bring Sells into custody. On the case hearing day, Crystal sat next to her grandmother amid the tensed and nervous crawler for the hearing and judgment of Tommy Sells. With incredible strength and resilience, Crystal described all the events as they happened that night and testified that Sells was present, even though he was requesting to be excused. Crystal said that the killer Sells had his hand over Katie's mouth. Katie was struggling and she urged Crystal to leave and run for her life with her eyes when she had her mouth shut. Crystal showed immense courage when she resided that night's event. She said that she did not make any movement. Sells used his knife to cut Katie's neck in cold blood, and that's when she fell to the floor, suffocating on her blood. The court found Tommy Lynn Sells guilty and sentenced him to death while on death row. Sells would later confess that that was not the only murder he had committed. He admitted to the murder of Joel Harper, a 10-year-old boy whose mother was accused of his death and convicted.